Good morning, Colorado. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. It is January 21st. It's 9:30 in the morning, and we are continuing our hearing on the financial assurances rulemaking. That is docket number 2106-00097. This morning, we have set aside several hours for the final approach to public comment. We've got about 42 people that will be speaking today. We look forward to hearing from everyone. I suppose we should start with the roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Bogue, Commissioner Gonzalez,
Here.
Commissioner Hackett, Commissioner McGowan,
Here.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Nanjapa,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 out of 7 commissioners present.
Excellent, and that is a quorum. Just as a reminder for everybody, we have ourselves as the panelists, and then we have all of our speakers and stakeholders listening in as attendees. We have a list of folks that have signed up. We've got about 42 people, as I mentioned. We will bring to the panel each participant for public speaking purposes. If you are a speaker, you need to accept the panelist invite from Hearings Manager Larson. Once you accept the invite, we will have an ability to hear from you. I will call upon folks in the order that they signed up. Everybody will have 3 minutes to provide their perspective and their comments. We did this yesterday, and I felt like folks were able to get across their perspectives within the 3 minutes. If anyone desires to provide additional information, you can always provide that in writing to us. We will start this morning with 2 individuals that need the assistance of a Spanish interpreter. We then will go to 2 elected officials, and then we will hear from the general public. So with that, I would turn this matter over to Ms. Hearings Manager Larson to bring our first speaker, Erika Ramos, to the table, and as well as her Spanish interpreter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Ms. Ramos in, and the interpreter is joining right now as well. So we'll give her a moment to get set up, and the interpreter will begin, and we'll turn it over to them now.
Hi there, this is the Spanish interpreter.
Thank you. And if you would like to go ahead and ask Ms. Ramos to begin her comments.
Hola, señora Ramos, ya puede comenzar con sus comentarios.
¿Quiere que haga pausa o me voy de corrido para que interprete?
Si puede pausar después de 2 o 3 minutos, estaría bien. Gracias.
Gracias. Buenos días, mi nombre es Erika Ramos, soy residente de la ciudad de Fort Collins y soy madre de 3 hijos. Soy una... Okay.
Good morning, my name is Erika Ramos. I am a resident of Fort Collins and mother to 3 children.
Soy una líder comunitaria que trabaja con la comunidad latina e inmigrante. Hoy estoy aquí para pedirles a la comisión que adopte reglas estrictas de garantía financiera a la industria petrolera.
I am a community leader representing Latino and immigrant communities, and today I am here to ask the Commission to adopt strict financial guarantees for oil companies.
Ellos deben de pagar los líos que ellos mismos han creado y no nosotros. No comprendo por qué los coloradenses tenemos que pagar por los errores de la industria petrolera. Es responsabilidad de ellos y solo de ellos.
They should pay for the problems that they cause and not us. I don't know why Coloradans must pay for the issues caused by the oil industry.
Si tienen dinero para comenzar un proyecto, también deberían tener dinero suficiente para tapar los pozos de una forma consciente.
If they have the necessary funds to start a project, they should also have the necessary funds to cover the oil wells in a conscious manner.
En Colorado hay muchos pozos abandonados que no fueron tapados correctamente. Estos tiran químicos en el aire, en el agua y afectan la salud de toda la comunidad.
In Colorado, there are many abandoned wells that were not covered correctly, and they emit chemicals that affect the air, the water, and the security and health of our community.
Espero que la comisión apoye reglas más estrictas de garantía financiera. Estos cambios ayudarán mucho a la salud de la gente y a proteger el clima de Colorado para las siguientes generaciones. Y gracias.
I hope that the Commission will adopt strict rules on financial guarantees. These will aid in providing guarantees for our health, as well as protecting the climate for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramos, for your testimony with us this morning. We appreciate your taking time out of your day and to provide your insight to us.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
We now will hear from Maria Gonzalez.
Sí, aquí estoy.
Yes, I'm right here.
Sí, ¿puedo empezar ya?
May I start now?
Yes.
Sí, señora.
Bueno, buenos días. Yo soy María González, residente de Fort Collins. Tengo muchos años trabajando con mi comunidad en asuntos de migración, de vivienda, y ahora estamos empezando a involucrarnos en asuntos del medio ambiente.
Good morning. My name is Maria Gonzalez. I am a resident of Fort Collins. I've been working with my community for many years on topics of immigration, housing, and now we're also becoming involved on climate topics.
Y al igual que la señora Erika, hoy estoy aquí para pedir a la comisión reglas estrictas de la garantía financiera a la industria. No, la verdad no entiendo cómo es que hemos tenido tanto el gobierno como los habitantes de Colorado, que los industriales no hayan respondido como se debe al trabajo que ellos hacen.
And similar to Miss Erika, I'm here to ask the Commission for strict rules on financial guarantees. I don't understand how the government, as well as Coloradans, have allowed the industry to continue in this manner without taking responsibility.
Creo que es obligación tanto de ustedes como de nosotros asegurarnos que estas compañías tengan una real garantía financiera para terminar los procesos que empiezan con la perforación de estos pozos.
I believe that it is your obligation, as well as ours, to ensure that these companies have financial guarantees and they finish the job when it comes to drilling these wells, for example.
Al final, la consecuencia es para todos, tanto para las personas que hacen este trabajo como para nosotros. Todos estamos respirando este mismo aire contaminado y pues estamos aquí para exigir, ¿no?, que ellos tapen debidamente los pozos que abren. Debidamente es también cubrirlos una vez que los hayan dejado de usar con el material adecuado para no perjudicar también a la tierra.
And at the end, this impacts us all, the people on the job, the community. All of us are breathing the polluted air. So I'm here to demand that they appropriately cover the wells that they've opened. Appropriately, this means they also use the right materials so that they do not contaminate the earth.
Creo que todos queremos lo mismo, ¿no? Mantener a Colorado con los índices de contaminación más bajos posible. Y pues muchas gracias por escucharme y por este espacio. Gracias, que tengan buen día.
I think that we all want the same, to keep Colorado with low pollution indexes, and that's why we're here today. Well, thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gonzalez, for presenting to us this morning. We appreciate your taking time and providing information to us.
Thank you.
Okay, we now will move into the next portion of our public comment. That would be Tom Jankowski, Commissioner from the West Slope, and then we have Matt Jones and then Bob Armstrong.
Sorry, my computer went haywire on me there. Can you hear me all right? Am I ready to go?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Tom Jankowski and I'm a Garfield County Commissioner. Today I'm here representing my personal views. I appreciate you are engaging stakeholders as you craft your oil and gas rules. When crafting these rules, please consider the differences between rural Colorado and the urban Front Range, and the differences between the natural gas operators and oil operations. When Senate Bill 181 was enacted in 2019, there were 5 rigs in Garfield County, and natural gas was selling at half the price it is today. Yet today we have only 2 rigs operating. Many of our constituents have lost their jobs and moved away. Investment and spending have not recovered in our county, and we are facing budget shortfalls, not just the county, but special districts, fire, hospital, library, school, parks and rec, and water districts. All depend on oil and gas property tax, and property tax has declined 40% since 2019. I support regulations and required financial assurance levels that are reasonable. The need to minimize the occurrence of orphan wells, yet protect the economy and the welfare of Western and rural Colorado. I'm here today to urge you thoughtfully consider the levels of financial assurance that are truly needed to craft rules to address the need without being excessively costly and damaging to our economy. Bottom line, I do not believe proposals to require full cost bonding in most situations have merit and will cause more harm than good. Full cost bonding in most cases is excessive, wasteful, and will likely lead to painful economic repercussions to Garfield County. I'm concerned the current draft tier structure unfairly targets natural gas producers. As currently drafted, it seems no natural gas operator will qualify for the cost-effective Tier 1 provisions, and instead would default to having to post exorbitant full cost bonding in Tier 2. I asked better align the rule to currently sort financial secure operators from those that pose a great or orphan well risk and assign financial assurance requirements accordingly. And I just will state that everybody that testifies before you today, from the moment they woke up until when they testified, has used a natural gas product, not just electricity or heating their homes, but fertilizer for food, capsule for their meds and supplements, plastic for their cell phone, bristles in their toothpaste, cosmetics, steel and tires for their cars, and synthetics in their clothing. Please provide common sense regulations and don't drive the natural gas industry out of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your perspective and for taking time out of your day to present to us. We do appreciate it. We now will hear from Commissioner Matt Jones.
Good morning. My name is Matt Jones. I'm a Boulder County Commissioner and also a Louisville resident. I'm speaking on behalf of myself today and being a voice for the people in Boulder County. I have 2 messages for you today. First, I was really glad to see the changes in the tier system in the so-called blanket bond rules in the new draft. Bonds should absolutely be measured per well, as you have done, as the only way to ensure that each operator is guaranteeing its full portfolio. But I urge you to raise those per well amounts to numbers that have a chance of covering the orphan well mess you now have on your hands and the messes that are sure to come your way. There's no possibility that a $15,000 per well, much less $3,000 or $1,500, will cover the cost of cleaning up a single well without issues. We in Boulder County have found that even the most benign appearing single wells almost always have cleanup issues once the dirt is turned over. Approximately half of the plug and abandon we've done this last year, which is a lot, revealed historic spills and spill contamination. That is to say, nothing in the carbon tractor data showing an average cost of $300,000 per well decommissioning. Operators have to pay their way to do business here. The current bonding amounts don't begin to cover that. My second message is this: listen to your local governments. I know several, including mine, are parties to this rulemaking. You all know that the Marshall Fire, what Marshall Fire did to Boulder County, unincorporated Boulder County, Louisville, and Superior. What you may not know is that local government staff, county and cities and towns that have borne and will keep bearing the brunt of responding to these natural disasters. Yes, we have a state and federal money, but the people in the field helping to displace the displaced, managing the cleanup and all its toxic hazards, and the people who will manage the rebuilding effort are local government employees and local district first responders. No one knows what is happening on the ground and what communities need like local governments. Similarly, it is local governments that carry the weight of responding to climate change. Boulder County is the unfortunate poster child for this, as we pivot from a massive flood response to historically devastating fire response. Listen carefully to what local governments have to tell you. Tap their expertise and their passion, and enact rules that hold every operator accountable for every well they drill, all the way until it is a healthy patch of native ground. On a personal note, as an evacuee at Louisville, our local government steps up. Unfortunately, we're really good at this because we've had 6 natural disasters in about 12 years. Please listen to us. This is part of what we need to do. Thanks for your time. I know it's a lot for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us and to provide the perspective from your community. Okay, with that, we will move into general public comment. The first commenter is Bob Armstrong.
Hi, I'm Bob Armstrong. In 2005, I moved from Lower Manhattan to Teller County, exchanging the industrial marvel of Roebling's Brooklyn Bridge filling my window for the natural marvel of Pikes Peak. It is appropriate that the sources of energy which power our lives have as small a footprint as possible while productive, and remediate their environment when no longer economic. The concern is, because of all the anti-scientific demonization of CO2, the molecule all life is built on, economically sustainable, high energy density, organic earth fuels will be subject to excessive politically motivated fees and restrictions. The claim that organic CO2 and CH4 detectably affect global temperature fails physics at an undergraduate or even high school AP level. Any politician acting on the basis of this falsehood is guilty of scientific malfeasance. The problem of orphaned wells appears to be rather minor and generally well reserved. On the other hand, low energy density wind and solar industrialize vast landscapes virtually by design. As John Christie, head of the UAH Earth Temperature Sensing Satellite System says, if it's not economically sustainable, it's not sustainable. Because of vast land requirements, massive reinforced concrete bases, which will be in our ground forever, extreme maintenance costs and short lifetimes, experience around the world is showing that wind and solar are not sustainable. As MIT Professor Emeritus Richard Lindzen says, what we will be leaving our grandchildren is not a planet damaged by industrial progress, but a record of unfathomable silliness, as well as a landscape degraded by rusting wind farms and decaying solar panel arrays. When setting rules for the bonding, the efficient earth energies our civilization relies on when bonding for their end-of-life remediation, there is far, far greater need for appropriately reserving the far greater remediation required for the already failing, politically driven wind and solar installations despoiling our landscapes from horizon to horizon, even when contributing their minor bits to our energy needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Appreciate your being with us this morning and providing your perspective. We now will call upon Amy Cyne.
Amy Mckay.
Amy Mckay. Actually, Miss Mckay, hold on just a second. We've got another Amy that was ahead of you.
Oh, okay.
Amy Ceney, if you want to unmute.
Sorry about that. I don't know if I'm, oh, and there's that too.
We can hear you and see you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Amy Cyne, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my family. Thank you for this opportunity to give testimony. I would like to urge this committee to completely discontinue using a single bond to cover multiple wells, and instead require bonds for each individual well that covers the full price of plugging and reclaiming that well. It is a basic kindergarten lesson. If you make a mess, you clean it up. The current estimate for cleanup or plugging and reclaiming a single well is $92,000. Under the old system, some individual wells were being covered for less than $1,000. This puts Colorado taxpayers at a huge financial risk for messes they didn't make. And the messes are significant. For instance, volatile organic compounds are given off at 100 times greater rate from unplugged wells. These compounds combine with auto exhaust to create ozone. We had 65 ozone alert days last summer. And on the 7th of August, Denver had the worst air pollution of all major cities worldwide. Not a record to be proud of. Colorado is one of the most beautiful states in the nation. We have a chance to keep it that way if we require gas companies to be responsible for the pollution they created. Thank you all for giving your time and attention to this vital issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning and providing your perspective. We do appreciate it. We now will call upon the second Amy, Amy Mckay.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, hello, commissioners. My name is Amy Mckay. I live in Denver and I have been a resident of Colorado for over 55 years. My father worked in the oil and gas industry and was transferred to Colorado in 1967. He worked in the DJ Basin long before all the cancerous growth invaded that area. His job provided for our family and for me to go to college. I also have had the privilege to work in the oil and gas industry. It has afforded me a good paying job and I'm a proud homeowner and taxpayer. But like many in the industry, my job was cut short recently due to political policies in the state. Just like you, I care deeply about our state and its natural beauty. I've climbed nearly all the 14ers. I enjoy skiing, biking, hiking, and camping. It's important to me that our natural beauty of this state be preserved. In regard to that, I've seen our industry make technological advancements and innovation to develop our natural resources responsibly and affordably for the citizens of Colorado. something the rest of the country could benefit from, and it's something I'm very proud of. Today, I ask you to reconsider this proposed rule change. There are already mechanisms in place to address this issue, and possibly those could be improved upon. Imposing this rule will negatively impact the cost of doing business and could take more jobs away from Coloradans like myself. In addition, I live in a 55 and older community. Most of my elderly neighbors are on fixed incomes. This proposed rule change will make energy more expensive across the board and create an unnecessary burden on elderly citizens. For example, a recent statement from Xcel Energy estimates the cost of energy in Boulder County to climb 37% over last year. We can expect this to happen across the state. In addition, just this week, AARP in Colorado urged energy regulators to reject Xcel's rate hike and criticizes any legislation which increases the cost of energy, which will especially affect marginalized groups, including my elderly neighbors. Having a secure and tested energy system is necessary for the well-being of and safety of Coloradans and the nation. Colorado oil and gas workers play a huge role in making sure we all have heat and clean water in our homes. In recent years, Colorado has been the testing ground for anti-oil and gas policies. I ask you to reverse course, to recapture your open-mindedness, to work with and collaborate with an industry that is full of problem solvers, environmentalists, engineers, geologists, field workers, and your neighbors. Change the course and become partners with this amazing group of people. Our state should be proud of the accomplishments made here in Colorado. We can and do set the standard. This should be something that you're proud of too, and it should be shared with the rest of the country. What we're doing here is amazing. Let Colorado be the leader that it is and help us solve our energy problems together. Your open-mindedness is the key to this. And as public servants, I encourage you to join hands with progress and not to hinder it. What will your legacy be? Higher energy costs for all Coloradans, or innovation and energy problem solving that could lead the nation? This rule should not go forward. It is punitive, and as public servants, I think it is time for you all to start collaborating with this industry, its professionals, and develop any future rulemaking together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coe. Appreciate you being with us and providing your perspective. We now will hear from Austin Nesselrode.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to allow the public to comment regarding the concerns of domestic energy production for all of Colorado. My name is Austin Nesselrode. I have lived in Colorado Springs for 18 years. I support the oil and gas industry because I volunteer at a local food pantry that many individuals and families of disaffected communities utilize. This recent proposal risks harming those living on the margins dependent on fossil fuels for cooking and heating due to the additional costs imposed on gas well operators in Colorado. I support the idea of oil and natural gas industry as a collaborative partner together for all of Colorado in maintaining our local economy that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us this morning and providing your testimony. We now will hear from Becky Ceratek.
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
It looks like we just lost Becky.
Give us one moment, we'll bring her back in.
Okay. Becky, we have you back in the panel if you want to unmute.
Hi, hello, my apologies. Yes, hello, my name is Becky Ceratek, and I'm a resident of Garfield County, Colorado. Let's see, I'm gonna find my speech here. Where'd it go? My apologies. Okay. In 2016, I worked for the Garfield County Public Library District. And since the prices dropped in 2015 and 2014, and the natural gas prices, it caused a very huge budget deficiency in for the 2017 budget for the library district. This resulted in me having to personally lay off 8 librarians because of this downfall. What people don't know in Garfield County is that most of our property taxes comes from the wells that are already drilled in Garfield County. If we don't have new wells, we don't have new taxes to pay for services like library, the 911 system, the fire districts, all the special districts that take to run our communities. People think that we get a lot of our property taxes from the $1 million homes in Glenwood Springs and Carbondale, but that's not the truth. As Tom Jankowski, my commissioner, was saying, we depend on these taxes. If we don't have new wells coming, we don't have new taxes. And so as I'm speaking as a person, I do work in the oil and gas industry, but I'm speaking as just a person. My apologies. I'm just asking this board to please work with the industry on these rules, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ceratek, for taking time this morning to present to us. We appreciate your being with us. We now will call upon Ben Katz.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you here today. My name is Ben Katz, and I'm the Public Lands Program Director for the Western Slope Conservation Center. Based in the North Fork Valley and Delta and Gunnison counties, the Western Slope Conservation Center builds an informed and engaged community to protect and enhance the lands, air, water, and wildlife of the Western Slope. Many of us live in the North Fork Valley to enjoy its picturesque scenery, its wineries, vineyards, farms, and ranches, its opportunities for solitude, and its opportunities for outdoor recreation. As the coal mines that once were driving forces of our economy begin to close, we believe that we can transition to a future economy diversified around agriculture, green jobs, clean air, water and wildlife, and sustainable outdoor recreation. The boom and bust cycle of the oil and gas industry, which is playing out during this financial assurances rulemaking, does not fit this new model. It is important that private businesses be responsible and accountable for all aspects of their business. I ask the COGCC pass strong statewide rules that require operators to pay the full cost of cleaning up their mess and incentivize oil and gas operators to properly plug and abandon wells when they are no longer productive. Because of insufficient bond levels, there is currently no incentive for operators to plug and abandon wells. It's financially more beneficial to them to delay plugging a minimally productive well indefinitely than it is to plug wells and remediate their sites. The COGCC must take a hard look at the financial assurances so that taxpayers are not left on the hook for cleanup or are subjected to the detrimental effects to public health, safety, welfare, wildlife, and the environment of unmitigated abandoned wells. The bonding requirements must also apply to wells on our public lands. A majority of the watershed in the North Fork Valley is currently managed by the U.S. Forest Service. The Bureau of Land Management also manages a checkerboard of lands on and around the valley floor. As it sits now, the draft rules for financial assurances do not apply to wells drilled on public lands. COGCC must also ensure that full cost bonds for every well are put in place that includes those wells that are drilled on public lands. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Katz, for being with us today and providing your perspective. We appreciate it. We now will call upon Brad Playfin.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Brad Playfin, and today I'm presenting to you a petition signed by 1,721 community members. These signatories aren't just from the usual suspects of Denver, Boulder, and Larimer County. but they are statewide from counties such as Phillips, Conejos, Morgan, Otero, Routt, Moffett, and Garfield. So if I may, the petition. The undersigned 1,721 community members, environmentalists, wildlife activists, and I are writing today to ask that you pass strong statewide rules that require operators to pay the full cost of cleaning up their wells and incentivize oil and gas operators to properly plug and abandon wells when they are no longer productive. Because of insufficient bond levels, there is currently no incentive for operators to plug and abandon wells. It is financially more beneficial to them to delay plugging a minimally productive well indefinitely than it is to plug the well and remediate their sites. According to Carbon Tracker, nearly 10% of Colorado's oil and gas wells have not produced any oil and gas in at least 2 years. The result of current regulations incentivizing operators to do anything other than plug the well. These state regulations leave Coloradans today and in the future at risk of picking up the tab to clean the mess that will be left behind. Colorado taxpayers have been burdened with paying operators cleanup costs for too long. I respectfully request that you adopt rules requiring full cost bonding to require that operators submit a bond sufficient to cover all costs associated with properly plugging, abandoning, and reclaiming locations. Thank you for adopting rules that will result in increased responsibility of operators, fairness to taxpayers, and a cleaner world for us all. Signed, residents of 43 of Colorado's 64 counties. Thank you very much.
Thank you for participating with us and providing that petition. We appreciate it. We now will call upon Christopher Noreika.
Hello, my name is Christopher Noreika, and I've been a resident of Summit County, Colorado for 23 years and support the oil and gas industry. I'm a construction manager for a development company that builds resorts and employee housing communities. Thank you for taking the time to listen today to my comment. I understand you are reviewing new rules with significant financial impacts to the oil and gas industry. Currently, we are seeing and feeling an impact of the current energy prices from heating our homes, fueling our vehicles, and increased costs to groceries. This fuel increase has also had a big impact to construction materials. Construction material delivery freight times and fuel surcharges have significantly increased, about 75% in the past year. Certain construction materials are now limited due to fuel shortages, and the high cost has also significantly increased the manufacturing prices of many materials. This is raising the housing prices, and this especially impacts first-time home buyers. I am concerned additional regulations to the oil and natural gas industry will further limit the supply of these necessary natural resources and further increase the cost of construction beyond what families and our housing market can afford. These additional regulations could also further increase the cost to heat our homes and put food on the table, and further reduce the supply of food and materials that could have many unforeseen circumstances that could decrease the value of our beautiful state. I have many friends in the oil and gas industry and have heard about the generous financial support this industry gives to our community at a local and state level. I ask for you to please continue to work with this industry while writing new standards and to keep them reasonable, to make sure the $10 million+ this industry donates is still given to our local nonprofits, and the almost $1 billion of tax revenue from this industry still continues to go to our state to support our schools and communities. If we continue to increase the cost by new regulations to this industry, we could push this industry to other states, or the cost will be passed on to us, the citizens of Colorado, when our fuel costs are already at all-time highs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the testimony this morning. Thanks for taking time out of your day. We now will acknowledge David Jewell.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
My name is Dave Jewell. I live in Larimer County, been here for 50 years, and appreciate Mr. Robbins and the commissioners for taking the time to listen to citizens today. Thank you for the work on the Oil and Gas Commission for the great state of Colorado. I've reviewed the draft changes to the financial assurance regulations for the oil and gas industry and ask that you continue with the guidelines that now are in force for 4 reasons. Our state's financial resources are agriculture and energy. Yes, we have good tax revenue from tourism, technology, and aerospace, but the 2 primary ones stand out from a standpoint of revenue for taxes and fees to support schools, infrastructure, services, and also what we offer in wonderful recreation for both citizens and visitors. From my standpoint of family, my wife and I raised 3 children in Colorado schools and enjoyed the benefits of the wonderful offerings the state provides, which are supported to a great degree because of the resources from our agriculture and energy. We enjoyed both summer and winter recreation and shared that with our children, bringing them up in a healthy and active environment. We have seen the success from government, the private sector, and citizens like our family to improve the environment through good stewardship, but not overbearing regulations on anyone. From my business, I started a marketing and distribution company 40 years ago and traveled throughout Colorado and surrounding states, working with hundreds of businesses, some small and some with hundreds of employees. During that time, there were 4 boom and bust cycles, many due to the mismanagement of energy regulation, either by state, federal, or international influences. And these will continue. Although many of the businesses closed, we were able to continue, as were many of our clients. But with more regulations such as SB 19-181, more will go under. A family member took over the business, and the first hire that he made was a neighbor who lost his job in the oil and gas industry due to that bill. On a personal level, we are retired and living on a fixed income, and due to inflation, overreaching government regulations, and especially energy and the Federal Reserve, I anticipate my expenses to go up significantly, cutting back on what I would like to do in support of my grandchildren's education, support charities, Marshall Fire Fund, food banks, etc. I ask that you continue with the current regulations on financial assurance of the oil and gas industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell, for participating with us this morning. We appreciate your comments. We now will turn to Deb York.
Thank you. Deb York, thank you for this opportunity. I was thinking about the task before you through my lens as a mother and a clinical psychologist. At Parents, we try to set rules to elicit health, responsibility, and accountability. The COGCC's task is similar. It's your responsibility to prove oil and gas regulations that prioritize health, environmental protection, and full financial assurance. For 30 years, I taught parents to ask themselves 4 questions to determine whether they or their children were responsible for solving a problem. The questions are, number 1, are my rights or the rights of others being disrespected? 2, can anyone get hurt? 3, are someone's belongings or property being risked or threatened? 4, have they failed to handle the problem with responsibility and accountability? If a parent answers yes to any of these questions, then it's dangerous. Parents must set clear, firm rules, monitor adherence, and apply timely consequences to protect and prevent harm. When these same questions are applied to the oil and gas industry, the answer is yes to all 4 questions. Yes, others' rights are being disrespected. Yes, there's potential and evidenced harm. Yes, there's property and environmental risk. And yes, the oil and gas industry has failed to responsibly handle the problem. As evidence, the industry has set no timely plan to clean up the 50 to 60,000 existing wells. They've left the majority of wells unplugged. 70% of Colorado wells are stripper wells, 35% of Colorado wells produce a single BOE or less per day, and 20% of Colorado wells produce no oil or gas, but they've been left unplugged. Colorado has financial assurance for only 2% of an estimated $8 billion liability for wells that have already been drilled. Unplugged wells cause significant environmental and health harm. The longer that poorly maintained stripper wells are allowed to operate, the greater the harm. Low production wells are inactive and shutdown wells leak and are a significant source of chronic pollution. Earthworks has filmed hundreds of FLIR videos with evidence of leaks in Colorado sites using exact equipment approved by the state. The Colorado oil and gas industry will only live up to what is required and enforced. A basic psychology tenet is that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Thus, like parents, the COGCC is responsible to solve this dangerous problem. You are mandated to protect. Clear protective regulations enforced with consistent and timely consequences are needed. Other speakers have talked about taxes paid by the industry and Colorado's needs for its oil and gas. With tax credit, the effective severance tax of oil and gas in Colorado is only 1.5%, and the vast majority of Colorado's extracted oil and gas is exported. This is a Faustian bargain. Oil and gas makes billions, exports the oil and gas, and we pay with our health, degradation of our air, water, land, and climate change. Without strong financial assurance rules, we also pay for their cleanup costs. Rules must tighten requirements for timely plugging and reclamation of low and no production wells. No blanket bonds allowed. Full cost bonding or escrow without exemption for all wells, new and transferred, and with a phased compliance for existing wells. Federal wells in Colorado are required to be covered by SB 19181. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation with us this morning. We do appreciate it. And at this time, we will call upon, is it Tax Finders Dion Malcolm?
Yes, that is the next speaker.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dion Malcolm. I own a company called Tax Finders. A lot of what my concerns are is obviously the bond to raise that higher so that there is accountability. My concerns are about the environment, and really I've lived in Colorado for my whole life, so about 50 years. I have a small child that is going to be growing up in this crazy world, and my concern is really what effects these are going to have on the environment, along with what the taxes really will be, from the consumer point of it. Those are my main concerns, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your presenting to us this morning. This time, I believe we're going to bring in Donald Kelly's next, and then after that, Scott Koski.
Hi, my name is Don Kelly, and I live in Windsor, Colorado, and I work for U.S. Water Services. U.S. Water Services employs 11 people in Colorado with an average wage of around $110,000 per year. We check oil that is being produced at the well to make sure that it's suitable for selling. We do regular checks either weekly or monthly on small to medium producers who don't have the technology to perform these types of tasks themselves. Our customers who we work with call us around the clock to help them sell their oil. Most of our customers are in the East and Northeast Colorado, ranging from Lyman to Sterling. Due to our frequent visits, we become familiar with the operators and landowners who own and manage these wells. It's not unusual to get invited to a landowner's family function, as we have watched and gotten to know generations of family members as they tend to their ranches, farms, and most certainly their oil wells. These are the true stewards of the land. Our smaller customers rely on the sale of their minerals to make ends meet. This has been especially true during the recent drought and now the pandemic. The wells owned by these small producers also contributes to the value of their estate, as cash flow from existing wells and undrilled acreage determines the value of their property. As the rules have changed, the opportunity to develop acreage also changes. Wells and mineral ownership, which was once thought to as an asset for current and future generations, now comes with a concern that this can become a future liability. These families may own 1 to 20 wells, and they're incredibly concerned about their family's viability in the future, and they're scared about what the future may hold for them. If the bond is increased, where will this money come from? If emission rules tighten, it may well require a well to be prematurely shut in. After all, a 2-barrel-a-day well produces some $20,000 worth of income to these ranchers and farmers, enough to fund an education or buy feed in tough times for their cattle operation. In some cases, there's predictions that this may result in the loss of farms or ranches. As for U.S. Water, as more wells are shut in, our company receives less work. Less work results in less people being employed. I ask that no change in the bonding for small to medium-sized production companies or those that are producing less than 1,000 barrels per day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you for being with us this morning. I believe we're now going to bring in Scott Koski in by phone.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me clear?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Koski.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak at this hearing this morning and reschedule for my unforeseen emergency that happened last night, preventing me from being able to attend the meeting last night. My name is Scott Koski. I'm a 59-year-old native of Coloradoan living in Wellington, Colorado. By education, I am an engineer with extensive international experience and a unique combination of being an independent rancher and farmer with my wife. The changes invoked by the state of Colorado toward the oil and gas industry since December 2019 have severely impacted our operations. Weld County operates a gravel pit on our farm. Incomes of $7,000 to $10,000 per month were enjoyed during the boom years of the oil industry. The gravel from our pit maintained new roads to and was the base construction material for well drilling pads. Since December of 2019, the incomes from the gravel pit have dwindled to a meager average of $150 per month. This reduces the potential taxable income for the state of Colorado by $80,000 a year. This reduction in revenue, combined with the increase in fuel, maintenance, and equipment costs, will cause us to scale back our farming and ranching operations, equipment maintenance, plus forcing in reductions in our livestock herd sizes. I fully agree. We need to live in a world with breathable air and potable, drinkable water that can be used currently, then passed on to our future generations. However, I do not support rules, regulations, and means which sacrifice and kill the primary income generators for the state of Colorado, those being oil, gas, and agriculture. I ask this commission to reconsider and cancel these revised bond plans. They will only result in costs continuing to skyrocket for oil-based products, the fuel put into your vehicles, and those used to transport all consumer goods. The end result for all will be less income left to live on, business stagnation, and most likely worse, more business failures. It also means a drastic reduction in the projected $200+ million severance funding used for Colorado's infrastructure support for roads, bridges, and schools. Once again, thank you for your time and the opportunity to reschedule, discuss, and speak this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Koski. I appreciate your being able to be with us today and to provide your commentary. We now will hear from Dorothy Greely. Ms. Greely, if you want to unmute.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Hello, commissioners, and thank you for considering my comments. I am Dorothy Greely, a resident of Colorado for 53 years and in Fort Collins about half of those years with my family. Colorado is a beautiful state and I want it to stay that way. We have all watched our cost of living increase to a 40-year high. Families, individuals, students, and seniors on fixed income suffer the loss of security and ability to keep up financially due to new and excessive arbitrary regulations. Losing our job or losing a job in the industry of energy because of oil and gas, losing a job in the oil and gas industry because they cannot comply to regulations has a domino effect, causing strife in families, our economy, and loss of industry. When we lose energy jobs, we lose millions in revenues. Like you, I value clean air and appropriate business practices in the oil and gas industry. Unlike other states, current regulations for abandoned wells in Colorado is covered, including financially. Please protect our environment while protecting this vital industry and all those employed with them, along with supporting industries. I ask this commission to listen to members of the oil and gas industry for fair and reasonable solutions. Thank you again for hearing my comments. And I'd like to say I'm impressed with the wisdom and knowledge and statistics of all of those who spoke before me. I appreciate your consideration and all your hard work. God bless America. God bless our citizens, and God bless Colorado. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Greely. We appreciate your being with us this morning and providing your perspective. We now will hear from Ann Cope.
Thank you, commissioners. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great. Thank you. My name is Ann Cope, and I've lived in Colorado since 1976 when my dad was transferred here as a jobber for Continental Oil Company. He worked his entire career for this company after serving in World War II and getting a college degree. He always provided for our family of 8 with a very modest income. It is of great importance that we maintain opportunities in the oil and gas industry here in Colorado. A few years ago, according to the Coloradoans for Responsible Energy Development, the oil and gas industry was accountable for over 232,000 jobs in Colorado. Keeping those jobs here is vital to our economy, especially with the extreme rising cost of living. Natural gas prices have doubled compared to this time last year. I have a vested interest in keeping the energy development thriving with clean natural gas. My son has special needs and is wheelchair bound. In order to provide transportation for him and many of the community of his friends, we own a handicap accessible vehicle. These are gasoline powered vehicles on the market. These are gasoline powered vehicles because there are absolutely no electrical vehicles on the market, and there certainly will not be in the near future. He attends Boulder County Public Schools with a large population of working class people. Many families are making tough decisions right now with the skyrocketing gas prices to fuel their trucks or to turn down their heat to an uncomfortable level. The answer for many is not to just put on an extra sweater like some of the government officials are saying here. As we have seen around the globe and as closer to home as Texas last year with the power grid failure, and as well as the rolling brownouts in California, energy independence is a good thing. Wind and solar right now cannot meet the entire needs of our energy demands. The increase of our dependence on foreign oil has also increased China and Russia's influence in the world. I believe that it speaks volumes that they actually don't have much consideration for the environment. And I do believe that we in the oil and gas industry do here in Colorado. I would urge you to take a more harmonious approach to business continuity for this industry. Commissioners, those who are speaking today care about our majestic mountains and protecting its beauty by ensuring the careful, safe covering of abandoned wells. We can do this with a shared approach, and thank you for this consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Cope. Appreciate your being with us and providing your perspective to us.
Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Elliot Barton.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission and the people of Colorado. My name is Elliot Barton. I live in Aurora, Colorado. I'm the founder and CEO of BNG Clean Fuel Corporation and a 64-and-a-half-year-old native of Colorado. I have served in many business capacities in my professional career, particularly in energy development, including solar, oil and gas exploration, and clean energy fueling development, first with LNG and now with hydrogen, both blue and green. My concerns and testimony are specifically intended to support the common sense development of new and clean energy, preserve the integrity of the oil and gas industry, its many employees, the tax base that the oil and gas industry provides to the citizens of the state of Colorado, and of course, the logical and ethical responsibility for clear safety measures and regulatory guidelines to protect all of us in the state, including oil and gas workers, property owners, businesses, and our citizens. It's my intention to support the obvious need for ongoing oil and gas exploration development for the foreseeable future, because the up and coming clean energy alternatives are, from my professional perspective, going to take many years to fully develop, and they will develop. The clean energy industry, global governments, the automotive manufacturers as a whole, all have common ground objectives, clean and green by the year 2050. We all need and want a responsible and accountable oil and gas industry, and much has developed positively in that direction over the past several years. The industry employs tens of thousands of highly skilled blue collar and white collar professionals. The industry needs to evolve, not to disappear, particularly the need to find an appropriate solution where the oil and gas energy providers and the people of Colorado who have utilized the various forms of energy that have been provided for more than 100 years. We all can't have our cake and eat it too. That is both industry and consumers. My suggestion is a fair and equitable shared cost of industry and consumers, an industry bond, not business prohibitive, and an insurance fund paid by the consumers who have used these fuels for all these years. I believe that drastic and sudden changes will have the following effects to the state of Colorado: an enormous tax base loss that affects schools, roads, transportation, and much more; job loss of thousands of industry people, affecting the tax base as well. Both large and small oil and gas operators should be assessed cost proportionately as they relate to actual activities they participate in. The oil and gas industry is making great strides and continues to pick up the pace of safer, cleaner, more responsible, and cost-effective methods and technology. The oil and gas industry is actively developing partnerships with clean energy companies, including solar, wind, hydrogen, and other alternative clean energy power. We obviously need to continue to constantly improve and evolve safety and security as innovative technologies are developed. New cost-effective.
If you could, Mr. Barton, if you could wrap up your time.
Yeah, I am. New and cost-effective methods of remediation need to constantly and continually be encouraged and incentivized. Thank you so much for your time and effort on the behalf of the citizens of the state of Colorado.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barton. Appreciate your being with us and providing your perspective this morning.
Thank you.
At this time, I believe we're going to recognize Harmony Cummins.
Hi,
I'm going to start by talking about my experience working in oil and gas and one company in particular, Extraction Energy. Here's a quote from when they were filing from bankruptcy from their chair of their board. The company is now well positioned to embrace a new E&P business model focused on generating returns above the cost of capital, delivering free cash flow, and most critically, returning that free cash flow to investors. After successfully completing the financial restructuring process, Extraction's capital structure now includes $1 billion reserve-based lending facility with an additional borrowing base of $500 million. And when I worked in oil and gas, it was my job to create borrowing base reports. This is a financial report card for how a company is doing. It has their liquid assets, cash, receivables, payables, inventory, and some other things. I want this information to be available to the state for each of the people who want to play here. Show us what you're working with. Submit these reports to the state. And the other thing that we had to submit with them was a bank account for our lenders that they could hold if we were getting into financial trouble or if our borrowing base wasn't well. We had to submit these reports every 2 weeks. So it doesn't seem out of line to ask these companies to report to you monthly or quarterly. This is important because you're going to see when they talk about caring about health, environment, and other things, let's look at these reports and let's look at how much these companies are making. And then let's compare them to the taxes that are being paid compared to the money paying out to top executives and investors. As was mentioned, oil is boom or bust, and many play the bankruptcy game. Extraction is now Civitas and is worth over $2 billion, but Extraction had over 1,500 wells. Are all these wells properly plugged and paid for? No new permit should be issued to companies who have ownership from previous companies who have abandoned wells. And then also, where is the state in order of lien holders? Because if you're not first or second in that line, you're not getting paid. The other debt collectors are going to come before you. So how does that all work? I'm hearing a lot today about the rhetoric around job creation, and that's what kept me in the industry so long. In February 2020, Extraction Energy laid off 20% of their workforce, paid millions to their top executives, then filed for bankruptcy, and in the same month won an award from the Denver Business Journal. And Jared Polis was a keynote speaker and told them that they were doing a great job, and if every company was like them, they would have no problems. Also, the cost of oil and gas prices being high, you know what costs more? Not being able to breathe air, not having water, having fires and disasters, the cost of food, food costs when we can't farm here. And then what about the cost of disproportionately impacted communities? Because we've been screwing them over forever. Because I've been to all these sites. I've been to these places all over the country, and it looks the same everywhere. We would write big checks to food banks and libraries and other things so we could get good PR. But why do these areas remain so poor if oil and gas has been great to these communities for decades? Yeah, and also because it was my job to calculate profits, I'll wrap it up. There are so many people making money that we can't attribute these regulations to the higher cost of gas because there's pipelines, there's producers, there's marketers, there's truckers, there's plastic manufacturers, utilities. And I sat in these boardrooms to calculate the profits and then also how to move our taxes offshore to avoid paying them. So I'm over all this rhetoric, and please, please do everything that you can to protect our air, community, children, water, and the future of Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. We appreciate your perspective. We will now hear from Janice Kravitz-Schlickman.
Commissioners, my name is Janice. I'm a resident of Colorado and really grateful for this chance to speak with you. As a preschool teacher and as a parent, I've always modeled and taught my kids it's important to clean up when we're done with whatever we're doing. It's just part of being responsible citizens to not leave our mess to be cleaned up by others. In fact, according to Montessori, it is part of the joy of working and being part of a community. I'm surprised oil and gas companies have been allowed to get away with this for so long. They reap the profits from these sites, and we are left paying for the cleanup, as well as dealing with the health effects of it all, which will remain long after they have abandoned their wells. Yes, most of us rely on oil and gas to heat our homes, fuel our vehicles, and many communities have come to rely on the income they receive from oil and gas. Is that revenue worth the ultimate cost? Perhaps it is time to draw other sources of revenue to our communities, ones that won't leave such a burdensome and dangerous legacy. Some of you may have children and grandchildren. Is it right or fair for oil and gas to leave their mess for our kids and grandkids to clean up? In addition, the cost of oil and gas taking responsibility for their mess should not be transferred to those who rely on oil and gas, especially those on limited income. The cost should be shouldered by those who can afford it, i.e. those who have benefited most from the industry, its shareholders and top executives. The mission of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is to regulate the development and production of natural resources of oil and gas in the state of Colorado in a manner that protects public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. I implore you to fulfill your mission. You have the power to do the right thing, to make things right, if not for us, then for our kids and grandkids. Thank you so much for this chance to speak on their behalf and for all you do to protect us and our beautiful state. I honestly don't envy you. Your job is not simple nor easy, but doing the right thing is always worth the effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us and for your presentation this morning. We do appreciate it. We now will recognize Jim Rainey. Jim Rain.
Yes. Hello, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm a lifelong Colorado resident, born in Leadville, Colorado at over 10,000 feet, and grew up in Gunnison on the western slope. I've hiked every wilderness area in this state, and I'm very interested in clean air and clean water, obviously with that background and enjoying the outdoors. But I believe it seems to me in looking at this regulation, this is a bit like hammering in a finish nail with a sledgehammer. I would ask you to consider the impact on the small producers and the landowners. I'm a financial planner now, live in Windsor, Colorado. I have kids and grandkids in the state. Many of my clients are agricultural people, and they really are true stewards of the land. If you want to know how to take care of land and water, talk to a farmer. Everything they do comes from having good land and good water. And those folks are in serious concern. As some other speakers have said, you know, they get royalties. Some of the royalties they get from their producing wells, even though they're lower producing wells, really is what allows them to continue their farming operations and ranching operations in many years. Secondarily, I would ask you to consider the unintended consequence of this regulation with regard to its impacts with inflation. You know, we've currently got the PPI index, producer price index came out last month, over 9% increase. Most of that was by food and energy. The consumer price index for December was up 7.2%. Those types of increase in costs are disproportionately impactful on middle income and lower income folks. They are the least able to afford bearing those costs. I feel very strongly as a financial advisor that these regulations will continue to drive those costs up, and I'm concerned if they'll actually really solve the problem. If you punish particularly the smaller operators in this state, you will force more of them into bankruptcy, leaving more unattended wells, and you may actually have the possibility of creating more of the problem you're trying to prevent. So I would ask you to consider that in your deliberations. Obviously, yes, the energy industry needs to be accountable. There need to be funds and need to be reserves, perhaps more inspection for lower producing wells, more inspection regimens to make sure wells aren't leaking, or other regulations to watch for casings in older wells. But it seems like a blanket approach to say we're just going to throw a $80,000 or $90,000 limit it. That doesn't fit every well. So I would encourage you a more nuanced look at this in cooperation with the industry. I appreciate your time and all your work on behalf of the citizens of Colorado. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your perspective and being with us this morning. We will now call upon Jodelle Masoni.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm a native of Colorado for my 69 years. This is my home. I care deeply about the quality of life for my family and friends and all those who call this beautiful state home. My grandparents' farm now carries the Centennial Farm designation in northeastern Colorado, and mineral rights to the gas wells there still provide income to my entire extended family. Mineral rights from property in Broomfield has also provided income to my immediate family. Rural Colorado has truly benefited from the oil and gas development in the recent years, and many of these folks struggled for years to make a living off the land, farming and ranching. We have a great financial insurance program in Colorado that is working. Orphan wells only represent 1% of the wells. So why would you even consider increases of approximately 1,000 to 78,000 per well? This has the potential to make the problem worse by forcing oil and gas companies into bankruptcy, leaving more orphaned wells. Only one commissioner on this group has experiences in this industry, and this makes me question, is your mission to help and support the industry or destroy it? The state receives $200 million in taxes, and the industry provides 400,000 jobs, and it has worked hard to meet improved environmental standards. Government should not be picking winners and losers, either by laws or rules from unelected bureaucrats. Business owners need the ability and time to make good business decisions, and any changes should grandfather in existing wells and have future start dates to any future increases. I attended a lecture given by the Dean of Chemical Engineering at CU Boulder, where he shared that it was necessary for this world to develop all sources of energy available for us to merely sustain the demands. And even if we did all things we could do, we would exceed these needs by 2050. Government has done exactly the opposite. We've shut down coal, nuclear, hydroelectric plants for many environmental reasons. The natural gas that fracking has produced here in Colorado has allowed us to maintain our standard of living, and it has even allowed this country allowed us to obtain energy independence for our nation, as well as meet many of the greenhouse gas goals that have been set. Energy costs are soaring. This is not the time to add any additional burdens that will increase costs. I appreciate your time for listening to my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning and providing your perspective in your testimony. We appreciate it. We will now call on Ed Darso.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Dear commissioners, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my comments with you. I am concerned about the future cost of fuel in Colorado. I'm Edward Darso, Arvada, Colorado. Have lived here for 51 years. I am retired from the phone system after 39 years. I am half owner in a crane business. The cost of natural gas to heat our buildings and the price of gasoline and diesel fuel have great effects on our business. The commission does a fine job of keeping the air and water clean. The Coloradans I talked to would like to see you continue keeping the air and water also keep producing gas and oil. What can Coloradans do to help make the United States energy independent and not dependent on other countries? I ask you to consider people like me when discussing the regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darso. We appreciate you being with us and providing that perspective. I believe now we will hear from John Anstead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, and thank you for giving me time to comment. My name is John Anstead. I've lived in Colorado since 1977. I'm a geologist and geochemist and have worked in the mining and oil and gas industries, environmental engineering, and environmental restoration fields for over 40 years. I've enjoyed our beautiful state, clean water and air, and rigorous economy, and hope to see Colorado continue to be a wonderful place to live, work, and play. I'm concerned the proposed increased pace of regulations will subvert any chance of successfully implementing reasonable and workable regulations that might actually protect our environment without seriously damaging our economy. Colorado is very blessed with many resources that benefited from carefully extracting them for our citizens' use and export. Our society depends on inexpensive and available energy. All aspects of our society and its economy, manufacturing, services, farming, food production, construction, entertainment, tourism, all rely on inexpensive and available energy. At a time when we see worldwide energy shortages, it seems ill-advised to potentially self-inflict such in Colorado. Our energy companies have striven to reduce their environmental footprints and be good citizens while providing much needed energy to our citizens. And they've done so throughout many environmental challenges and regulatory changes. A more reasonable plan was in place prior to passage of the recent House Bill 1266. That bill's escalation of oil and gas regulation seems like it may actually impede the governor's plan, which was collaborative with industry, and impede it with increased regulation, likely hurting rather than helping to accomplish his stated goals to ensure environmentally responsible energy for all Coloradans. I fear that unnecessarily heaping additional costs and other regulatory burdens on oil and gas operators will eventually result in reducing the amount of inexpensive energy available to all Coloradans, ultimately chasing our energy companies out of our state, reducing good paying jobs and paychecks to hardworking Coloradans, as well as associated lost revenue to other businesses in Colorado. Additionally, the aggregate loss of tax revenue will result in significantly higher income or property taxes or reduced government services. I've already heard about slowdowns occurring in the oil and gas industry, affecting losses in income to many with good paying jobs. Such will only increase, reducing many Coloradans' quality of life. I encourage the Conservation Commission to consider these very likely results and work collaboratively with the oil and gas industry and operators while making their regulatory decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Enstead, for giving a part of your day to us and for your perspective. We do appreciate it. We will now move forward, and I believe we will recognize Josh Joswick.
Okay, hang on a second. There I am.
There
Okay.
you are. We can see you and hear you.
All right. Good morning. Morning, Chair Robbins, commissioners. I honestly do not know what words will convince you, but please consider these. You know why you're here. You're supposed to secure Colorado's financial future. And the draft you have before you for consideration does not accomplish that. At best, the proposals in it, while well-intentioned, are expedient. They skirt the edges of full responsible regulation by relying on the lick and a promise approach to dealing with an issue that needs directive regulation, not vague references to some hoped-for result. Non-industry groups have solidly identified shortcomings of the December 2021 draft and offered improvements which provide a blueprint for directive regulation. If these proposals seem to be too much tough love, that is because tough love is what is needed to address the dire situation Colorado finds itself in today. Most importantly, noted by the non-industry groups is the non-compliance with Senate Bill 181 and the violation of Article 11, Section 1 of the Colorado Constitution. Also identified are requiring single well financial assurance for all new wells and transfers, eliminating blanket bonds, clarifying the to-dos in the out of service well list, having rules apply to federal wells, and limiting limiting discretionary action by the director. These are common sense solutions. They de-risk the state. That is the core of this commission's task. The primary questions you have to ask yourselves are, do these regs give the industry an opportunity to game the system? Can we trust them when they say they won't? And the next question is, what in their history would lead you to believe that you can take them at their word? Because now you're telling you that this time you can trust them. Do you honestly think that if given half a chance, they won't walk? You simply cannot accept this trust us mantra. Please do not be naive. The rules you adopt cannot continue to let operators hop down, as Commissioner McGowan stated, the bunny trail, happily knowing that the state will cover their assets and liabilities. Do not conflate the best interests of the state with the best interests of the industry. Operate with the precautionary principle in mind. You create regulations that will establish a sound system of accountability that has two things: significant immediate impacts and long-term stability. Then the legacy of this commission will be that under pressure to not act responsibly, you acted responsibly. You did not leave this problem for future commissions to handle. You stepped up. Folks, I want to thank you for doing this and the best of luck in your deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Joswick. Always appreciate hearing from you on these topics. Thanks for giving us some of your time this morning.
Appreciate it.
Now we'll hear from Karen Artel.
Yes, hi. Okay, so my name's Karen Artel. I live in Larimer County. I appreciate all the efforts of staff and the commissioners in drafting these financial assurance regulations. I'll address low producing wells. I appreciate earthworks field work in Larimer County and throughout Colorado. Sorry about the dog. Earthworks found that low producing, shutdown, and inactive wells are significant sources of emissions. Earthworks conducted 105 investigations of Colorado oil and gas facilities from August through December 2021. 27 complaints were made to the APCD based on optical gas imaging evidence of leaks from tanks, wells, and equipment. 17 of these complaints were low producing or inactive facilities, and 8 of the complaint sites were repeat violations. In Larimer County, we have examples of small operators not properly and routinely maintaining and repairing tanks, wells, and equipment. Reference a recent Coloradoan article that leaks from one operator's tank battery site near Fort Collins. Despite attempted repairs by the operator, these tanks had been leaking on and off for 2 years. Another Larimer County small operator has 8 of 11 reported spills in Larimer County in 2021, and is one of the operators reported to APCD for leaking equipment. How many operators do not properly repair and maintain their equipment? My concern is the lack of repair and maintenance of equipment for any operator can also be evidence of financial difficulties and the risk to taxpayers to pay for eventual plugging of wells down the road. Wells should not be allowed to be inactive for an indeterminate amount of time. Wells should be plugged or returned to production within 6 months of being inactive. Also, requiring single well financial assurance is important. The rules must incentivize operators to properly plug and abandon non-productive wells. Please hold all operators to the same standards and financial assurance requirements so that plugging wells is a priority instead of maintaining wells in an indefinite low producing state. And also remember that oil and gas emissions are the greatest contributors to Fort Collins ozone formation and at the Fort Collins West Ozone Monitor. And those emissions are carried on prevailing winds from Wells County. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Artel. We do appreciate your being with us and providing that perspective. Folks, we've got about an hour's left of public comment. We've been going at it for an hour and a half. I would suggest we take a 10-minute break and then come back for the last hour of public comment. So if folks are good with that, we will reconvene at 11:10. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and we are continuing with public comment on our financial assurances rulemaking. We will now turn to Kimberly Sled.
Yes, that's correct. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Kimberly Sled. I'm a Colorado native and live in Lakewood, Colorado. My husband and I own a small computer-aided drafting service. We have had many opportunities to draft for the oil and gas companies. My husband worked for Conoco Exploration in the early 80s until the oil and gas crash in early 1986. We have drawn gas pads, miscellaneous equipment designs for drilling, and maps of drill and well locations over the last 26 years. I have seen firsthand the exploration, drilling, and operation of gas wells in northeastern Colorado on the family farm. I have also seen the cleanup, repair, and maintenance, and continued stewardship of the land by the gas company. By adding additional security deposits to take care of what I understand to be less than 1% of abandoned wells will cause a ripple effect of lost jobs, companies leaving Colorado or going bankrupt, further increase of energy costs to the consumer, impacting the landowners, and loss of revenue to the state. You have always worked with the oil and gas industry to fairly resolve issues. I ask you please to continue to do so and to keep the already strong payment system to take care of these abandoned wells and not add additional security deposits. We need to keep a strong oil and gas industry in Colorado. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with us this morning and providing your perspective to us. We do appreciate it. I believe we're now looking for Louise Vanderkool, followed by Alan Harvey.
And Ms. Vanderkool is calling in via phone, and we've unmuted your line, and you're able to speak now.
Ms. Vanderkool, you may need to hit *6 on your phone.
Ms. Vanderkool, we can also bring you in. I see that you're actually in the meeting. We can bring you in as a panelist. And
Yes, she just said she's on her computer in the chat.
okay. She's coming in as a panelist.
We see that you're a panelist, Ms. Vanderkool. If you want to unmute. There you go. You're still muted. We cannot hear you.
Ms. Vanderkool, the issue may be if you called in on your phone. Oh. There you are. If you called in on your phone, you may not have joined the audio through your computer for the Zoom meeting. So that's perhaps why we're not hearing you.
So maybe hang up your phone if you still have your phone going.
Yeah, and then rejoin audio via your computer. And Ms. Vanderkool, we still do have your telephone unmuted. Oh. Okay.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we move to Mr. Alan Harvey? He is with us and we can take use of the time and get back to Ms. Vanderkoop.
Sounds
Mr.
good.
Harvey, if you want to unmute.
Thank you, Chairman Robbins. My name is Alan Harvey. I am a resident of Carbondale, Colorado, up in Garfield County. As you know, the second largest producer of natural gas in the state after Weld County. I'm a former elected official. I served for 4 years on the Carbondale Board of Trustees, so the town government. I can speak to the fact that many residents in Garfield County do not align with Commissioner Jankowski's views on regulation of oil and gas. And I just want to urge this commission, there's big deals going on here. This is a problem that's growing. It's not a problem that's shrinking. And if we kick the can down the road on regulations with financial assurance, someone else is going to pay and it's going to cost more. And I really urge you to kind of think about the long-term health of the state, both financially and from an environmental point of view. We just had a December fire that, that burned more homes than ever burned in Colorado in a single fire. I mean, it was frightening. And to think that that's not this is something we can do towards reducing our impact on climate change and cleaning up the 17,000 wells that are sitting around now producing a single barrel of oil equivalent per day. The 9,500 wells that produce no oil and gas but aren't plugged. There's just so much to do. It's going to cost taxpayers money. It's also, but it needs to cost the industry money. I agree with the earlier comments from the gentleman who said that the regulations before you are not enough. They aren't enough. And I urge you to really kind of dig deep. It's a tough deliberation, but really kind of solving this problem is about cleaning up our environment. It can make a mess. The Front Range ozone alert days are a mess. And Garfield County scored an F in the American Lung Association's State of the Air report for ozone, an F. That puts us in league with La Plata County. Actually, we're worse than La Plata County this year. La Plata County has a lot of things outside its control affecting its ozone. There's quite a bit in Garfield County that can be taken care of. And part of that is having strong regulations with financial assurances that, let's put a per well fee on this. And you know what, if it transfers, let's charge the new owner. Let's make people responsible for the mess they're making and cleaning it up and make this a problem we solve now and not later. Thank you. Good luck with your deliberations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harvey. We appreciate it. Appreciate taking time out of your day from Carbondale to speak to us. We now would attempt to recognize Ms. Vanderkoop again.
Okay, thanks. I just
great.
turned 70 today and I'm technologically challenged. Sorry.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. Good morning. I moved to Colorado in 1975 for a law degree and then became a psychologist after doing custody mediation in one divorce case. I became educated in oil and gas when Extraction proposed 144 wells near our Broomfield neighborhoods in 2017. I understand that juggling all interest is difficult. Thank you for your hard work to prioritize health, safety, and environment. Given our experience with extraction, we need clear, easily administered rules that protect our health, safety, finances, and future. The industry has gotten too much wiggle room because their business model is based on profit and power rather than responsibility. We are dependent on fossil fuels, and industry has been deceitful about negative impacts. First, we need adequate insurance and protection. Though risk of catastrophic events is low, we've had 2 fires in Broomfield, one involving a filter and the other last week an enclosed combustion device, which sent out huge billows of black smoke that terrified residents. Extraction took our Oil and Gas Committee to visit the Stromberger pad in 2017 to showcase best management practices. The pad blew up 6 months later. An on-site contractor told reporters it could have been like an atomic bomb going off had workers not been able to close all valves. After that, the state emphasized how safe operations generally are, and extraction made vague promises. We measure benzene levels up to 186 parts per billion, headaches, eye and throat irritation, nosebleeds, noise prevents sleep, ozone and smoke days. We worry about health as well as safety. We need for you to assure adequate insurance coverage, oversight, and emergency planning. We are in drought, pads are nearby on open lands, and we are forced to assume risk. Second, we need financial assurance for plugging, remediation, and reclamation. Our Davis 43-6 well was plugged, leaked, and cost over $300,000 to remediate so homes could be built. We're tired of infrastructure that leaks methane and contaminates soil. Your rule should place full responsibility on operators as cost of doing business and adequate assurance per well. Your rule should be clear as to when wells are beyond useful life. Your rule should require industry to pay for cleaning up orphaned wells. We're tired of operators and investors profiting while we suffer. And would you have time for a limerick?
Sure.
Okay. This is from a friend. Oil and gas is a thrill, especially when regs are near nil. I hate cleaning up, don't be a schmuck. Someone else please foot the bill. A driller once came for our oil, our environment they attended to spoil. They took all our wealth and ruined our health, and now regulations they foil. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your participation and your limerick. Thank you.
Thanks.
We now are going to recognize May Trumbull.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for accommodating me and allowing me to testify. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm retired. I'm a tax-paying citizen representing myself. And I thank you for the opportunity. We are now staring at the perfect storm of unplugged and abandoned wells and stand on a precipice, a time when we can rewrite the way of doing business. Please write in that the operators must pay 100% of the cost of plugging a well ahead of time. If this was a situation earlier, we wouldn't have the dilemma of all the orphan wells, their chronic pollution, and cleaning up after the long gone operator. It's a very black eye for the oil and gas industry. I ask you to write in 100% bonding for the industry. Operators need to pay their way. 100% to pay for their well, all the way to plugging it up when finished. I believe also that the federal wells need to be bumped up to 100% as well. There are many more responsibilities than just plugging a well when it's finished. There are other costs of business to address, such as accidents and spills and seismic activity beyond the well site. That needs to be covered ahead of time as well. This will stop the abandoned wells, those that had stopped production and operators that had a track record of uncompliance and corrective action. The businesses that I have started did not have the environmental repercussions that oil and gas has, and I was required by law to pay 100% of my way ahead of time through insurance, etc. Since oil and gas has such environmental impacts, it is a responsibility of the industry to represent itself financially 100%. We have a choice to make it right now. Pay it ahead of time or pay it later. We can see where paying attention to obvious weak links ahead of time can save us in the future. Personally, if I didn't prepare in my own household for emergency situations financially, I wouldn't be able to pull it out in the middle of adversity. The industry must pay for the cost of doing business. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony to us this morning. We do appreciate your spending time with us and providing that perspective.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Great. Next on the list are Madeline Parker, Mara Fielding, and Mark Ebner. I see Mark Ebner is in the panel with Allison Ebner. I do not see the other two, Ms. Larson.
Correct. We're not able to find Madeline Parker or Mara Fielding, and we're going down the list. And if you're on the list and you received a request to become a panelist, please do accept that so we can get you in quickly.
Hello, Mr. Ebner. We see you're with us now. Do you want to unmute?
Yeah, absolutely. How's that?
Great.
Hey, so hello, my name is Mark Eibner. My wife that's on the picture isn't with us, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I'm a resident of Douglas County, live in Parker, lived here 38 years. I've been active in real estate and the construction business for 35 of those 38 years. I mean, we have a staff of 6 employees, house over 100 brokers. I can tell you, I see the direct effect of further restrictions in all the energy sectors that we're seeing right here. I mean, we see people moving out of state. We see businesses closing. I see some of my ag friends suffering, higher petrol costs, all the heating costs, massive energy inflation is what we're seeing. Specifically, it really hurts. Does it hurt me and my income? Probably not near what's hurting the middle and lower income people. People that drive for Uber, people that do Instacart, filling their tanks up. Interesting. You know, they're really the least able to absorb any of these costs. I support the oil and gas industry. I mean, like it or not, energy is a critical part of our state's success. I believe our 2020 severance taxes were somewhere in the realm of 200 million in revenues. As far as our roads, our schools, our first responders, anytime we move, just move in a one size fits all, increasing bonds, increasing this, taking money up front, for what I've read through, somewhere in the area of, we're talking about 1% of the entire oil and gas industry model. I mean, this well capping issue to me is nothing but a red herring, totally a red herring. Can continue to meddle in the business, drive out small and middle producers, and enrich really the people that can well support it, large globalist multinationals. Okay. Well, they're the people that can do anything that you want them to do, and they will until they just have a stranglehold on us and everyone's squeezed out, i.e. Amazon. They're doing pretty well versus the mom and pop shops across the US. You know, I ask that you guys, the commissioners, work with the industry, all the people. None of us want dirty water and dirty air and all the other threats that are thrown around out there. We just want people to make a living and get by. You know, that's all we're really asking for. I think you guys have probably worked quite well with the industry in the past, and I would hope that you continue to work with our energy sector in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your being with us and providing your perspective to us this morning during public comment. Now we'll call upon Mike Edwards.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to speak. My name is Mike Edwards. I retired and moved to Colorado about 15 years ago to be near my son and daughter. After moving from California, I was concerned about energy costs due to the extreme weather compared to California. I was pleasantly surprised that the energy costs in Colorado were much less than California. I worked in the oil business for 32 years in pipeline transportation and have seen how regulated that business is. Our company put a priority on following all regulations. My son decided to open a small restaurant in Johnstown where we live. I worked with him for over a year during construction to get it started. So we have a lot of interest there. We have worked through many government regulations as a startup business. COVID was really hard on our business due to state restrictions, but we survived in part due to Weld and Johnstown grants. The restaurant business works on very small margins, and I've seen the negative effects of the large minimum wage increases over the last 10 years. We hire mostly moms and teenagers who are part-time workers. We're only open for lunch and serve many oil workers on a daily basis. When the oil companies cut back, that affected our business. I understand you are in the process of financial assurance rulemaking. I would ask that you would work with the industry in making rules that would not be more restrictive. The oil industry funds much of the government's revenue in Colorado. When rules are made more restrictive, this leads to less production and in turn less revenue for the government. Then the government looks to other sources, which increases taxes affecting everyone. I enjoy living in Colorado, and I would not like to see it become more regulated as in California. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. We appreciate your being with us and providing that perspective. We now will call upon Mike Rector.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. My name is Mike Rector, and I've been around the oil and gas industry all my life. My family moved to Colorado in 1991 after my parents spent time here in the 70s and 80s. The oil industry brought my parents out of poverty and currently supports my infant son. I'm currently an operations engineer for a small company started in 1989. And for the last 33 years, this company's provided 30 employees with a great living and countless contractors as well. This is the kind of company people don't leave, they retire from. And in 2020, during the pandemic, when oil prices really went to hell, rather than laying anyone off, everyone took pay cuts and the partners reduced their salaries to zero. We don't cut corners, we follow all regulations, and we keep our locations clean. I support and was happy to see the actions that the COGCC took against KPK for their failure to obey regulations and clean up their well sites. KPK is not a normal Colorado operator, and their poor reputation preceding the COGCC's actions attest to that. No one in the industry wants to see operators like KPK. The industry is typically filled with a lot of people who really love the outdoors and who value a clean environment. They don't stand for operators like KPK that fail to take the most preventative measures. The current proposal to change the bonding requirements to operate in the state of Colorado is both unnecessary and will pose a large financial burden on small operators. One thing to first note, a stripper well is any well that produces fewer than 15 barrels of oil per day. That's a significant amount of oil. Additionally, stating that a well produces only 1 BOE per day is misleading. A well that is time pumped, or one that is produced and then shut in for a small period of time and then produced again to let the reservoir recharge, is not a non-productive well. Currently, the COGCC lists 121,580 wells in Colorado via the website. There are 236 wells on the orphan well list. That represents 0.19% of all wells. And of that 236, 49 are listed as already in progress, leaving 0.15% of the wells as orphans in need of work. Based on the 0.15% orphan well percentage, oil and gas companies are in fact cleaning up after themselves and carrying the cost of abandoning their wells and reclaiming the land. To be clear, the majority of oil and gas producers operating in Colorado are not large, faceless multinational corporations, as some seem to believe. While there are some mid-major operators, most operators are companies you've never heard of, run by Coloradans. These companies and people are not nefarious executives looking to make a buck by any means necessary, as many commenting today have described them. They are not untrustworthy or deceitful, as was previously mentioned. They don't have offshore bank accounts to avoid taxes, and they don't look to hide their cash from the taxpayers. They are simply people in oil and gas who happen to live in Colorado. The orphan well list contains only 50.
If you could wrap up your time.
Okay. The orphan well list contains only 15 operators responsible for more than one orphan well. That's simply 3% of the 480 operators listed in the wells on the COGCC website. Bonding each well is likely to cost $2,000 per well, which is going to reduce the amount of capital that can be applied to drilling new wells and replacing existing production. This is a mistake when this regulation is really just a hammer looking for a nail. It's just going to drive up energy costs as those companies don't replace production. We're still 1.2 million barrels of oil per day below pre-pandemic oil production levels. And that drop in production associated with the drop in natural gas is what is raising the energy prices across the country. So I'd ask that you don't adopt this new regulation. It simply is not necessary based on the COGCC's data. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rector. Ms. Larson, who do we have next?
Mr. Chair, we can bring in Miss Madeline Parker. She's calling in via phone, and we will unmute her now.
And we couldn't find her earlier, so let's bring her in now.
Correct.
Thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for extending this time to me to share my concerns for those with special needs and for those who are their caregivers. My name is Madeline Parker. I'm an 82-year-old retiree from the telephone company in Denver, and I find myself still employed working for Pasco as a trained certified nurse's assistant to provide daily care for a grandson who has autism, Tourette's syndrome, and other things that come along with that territory. Since 2014, Medicaid pays me to provide home health care for Joseph. Joseph is incontinent and requires a lot of daily cleaning of clothes and bedding. This leads to more than average usage of washer and dryer. Joseph sleeps a lot in the daytime and spends time during the night watching TV, listening to music, and so on. We use a small electric heater to keep him warm while we're sleeping, and the furnace is turned down a bit. Both Xcel Energy and Denver Water have sent us comparative data on how our energy usage is considerably higher than that of our surrounding neighbors. Our next concern will be the fact that Nebraska is closing in on us with their plans to divert water from the Platte River in Colorado to Nebraska. But that's the next fight. Many of our families are faced with similar circumstances to ours when the cost of energy usage is raised to homes and businesses. We get hit again when those businesses are forced to raise their costs to make a profit. I'm sure that the oil and gas industry wants to be fair to in considering what's best for all Coloradoans. So let's be fair to the industry. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Parker, for taking time to be with us today. We do appreciate that, and we appreciate listening to your position. We now will recognize Omar Iroglu, and I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce that last name.
You actually did a very good job with the last name.
Oh, good. That's unusual for me. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, I wanted to thank the commission for the opportunity you're giving me to speak here today. My name is Omar Iroglu, and I'm a resident of Adams County, and I live in Thornton, Colorado. I'm in the transportation service business. Cost of energy affects me in business and at home. As a country, we are fortunate to have such supply of these resources, and it is in our best interest to produce as much of it as possible to provide it to all consumers at a reasonable cost. And we are capable of doing this responsibly. Price of everything is increasing. my business is already suffering from cost increases across the board. Vehicles and any parts are already hard to find due to production shortages and very expensive when you do find them. For example, my repair shop has been out of stock for some oil types for weeks. Unnecessary cost increases will be an additional burden to me and the public. It is also important to understand all the planning that goes into making a business commitment. When someone signs up to a plan, it's with the understanding that the rules and conditions they agree to are not going to change for the duration of that deal. When those conditions can be changed after agreement, it can have very negative effects on the company. It can force them out of business, causing unemployment and potential abandonment of those very wells. When the commission is considering new rules, good faith should not be forgotten. Considering the portion of wells that are actually abandoned compared to the total number of wells being less than 1%, we don't want to send the wrong message to the operators that are compliant. It is true that countries like China and even Germany are doing everything to move away from fossil fuels. That is because they don't have any. Every other country in the world that has any oil or gas is producing it at near zero restrictions. Oil in particular is used in 2,000 different industries other than fuel. A resource that is so much a part of our lives is a need, and every effort should be made to make its production and availability as easy and affordable as possible. By bringing in new unnecessary rules for cleanup, as if every well out there will need to be repaired, will need cleanup afterwards, is not necessary. We should work with the industry. We should work with the engineers that know what to do and how to do this. And this should not be local or federal government decision solely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us and for sharing your perspective with us this morning. We now will recognize Paul Taylor.
Good morning, Commissioner, and thank you for your time. My name is Paul Taylor. I am a Colorado native with a degree in petroleum engineering from the Colorado School of Mines. Between my late father and me, we have over 60 years of oil and gas industry experience, much of that in Colorado, but also from all over the world. I could not be more proud of the good oil and gas has brought to the communities where I lived in terms of jobs, charity, and quality of life. In fact, I would go as far to say no other industry on earth contributes more to the public sector than oil and gas in the form of taxes, royalties, fees, profit sharing, and charity. In Colorado alone, I've seen analysis that estimates over $1 billion goes into the public sector annually. However, I am now retired and I live in the foothills of Golden. My lifestyle here is 100% dependent on oil and gas. Mountain living, recreation, tourism, all would be impossible without it. Accordingly, I have concerns that the COGCC appears to be adopting a position opposing oil and gas in Colorado rather than partnering with it. Energy is the basis of everything we consume. Folks like me on a fixed income are being unfairly and unnecessarily penalized by inflation caused in part by higher energy prices, eroding savings that took a lifetime to accumulate. Everyone can agree financial assurances for abandoning oil and gas wells is a reasonable goal. But from what I can see, the orphaned well program already addresses this problem. So what is the justification for imposing additional assurance at this time, especially if such requirements may make the problem worse, causing more operators to give up and walk away from their responsibilities? Is there any other industry in the state that must put up bonds for multiple decades to guarantee assurance like you're considering right now? Does the wind industry do this? Does the solar industry do this? If not, is what you're considering even fair? I'm not a lawyer, but I don't even know if it's legal. So please don't drive the oil and gas industry out of Colorado. This would be a huge mistake that would ultimately hurt the state and the citizens who live here. The system isn't broken and doesn't need fixing. Access to reliable and affordable energy needs to be society's #1 goal. And I am opposed to any new requirements that run counter to this goal. And as I've been listening to people speak, while I have one minute remaining, I wanted to make a few remarks. First of all, I hear claims about a problem that doesn't seem to have happened yet. So I think claiming that there will be a problem in the future is a poor justification for supporting additional regulation. Things like emotions or poetry are also weak arguments to try to make your decision on. And I hope the commission can identify those types of things when they see them. But the final thing I wanted to say was I've heard a couple of speakers make an allegation that the fires in Boulder that occurred in last December were caused by something that has to do with regulation in the oil and gas industry. And that, I think that is not supported, and it's actually disrespectful and a disgrace to the people who live there. Those fires occurred in the windiest month in Boulder by historical records, and 2021 in Boulder was not a drought year. So I firmly oppose what they said, and I think it was a disgrace that they brought that in. Thank you for your time, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate you being with us this morning and providing us with your perspective. We now will recognize Robert Moran.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Bob Moraine. My family has lived in Fort Collins for almost 42 years. As we all desire to keep Colorado beautiful and clean, I recognize the value of requiring financial assurances that oil and gas wells will be properly cared for and not recklessly abandoned. On a national scale, the performance of Colorado oil and gas producers to date has been exemplary, and we have experienced a relatively very low level of need to exercise the financial assurances that are currently required. It appears that the proposed financial assurance rules would raise revenues far in excess of what is needed to assure clean operations, with per well assurances so high that smaller producers would be forced to cease operations in Colorado, leaving larger producers free to operate with reduced competition. Far beyond the stated goal of assuring that oil and gas operations are clean and safe, the proposed rules become punitive to the very industry they are supposed to support. This punitive spirit appears to be in response to a few bad actors. We must remember that justice does not allow for punishing those who act in good faith to pay for those who abuse their privileges. Rather, rules and legislation must be in place to deal with any bad actors. Cost prohibitive regulations will severely impact the affordability of living in Colorado. When operations are forced to shut down, Colorado communities are hurt as their direct and indirect contributions are removed. As production is limited, state and local tax revenues will decrease, jeopardizing support for public schools, emergency services, and other things we value. Further, fuel costs affect every aspect of life for Coloradans, from the cost of groceries to the cost of heating homes to survive harsh winter weather. We are already experiencing record-breaking levels of inflation in the nation and across Colorado. It is fiscally irresponsible to unnecessarily punish any industry in our state, as such actions will surely add to inflationary pressures, hurting most the poorest among us. I urge the COGCC to seriously consider the negative consequences of the proposed rules. Colorado is wonderfully clean and beautiful today, and demanding excessive financial assurances from oil and gas providers will not make it better and will risk driving citizens out of the state by adverse economic outcomes. Thank you for hearing our concerns today.
Thank you. We appreciate you being with us and providing your perspective. We now will recognize Roger Steen.
I'm Roger Steen in Routt County, West Slope. As an air pollution engineer, I'm focused on eliminating leaks from orphan and low producing wells in Colorado, as these leaks are totally an unnecessary waste. There is no useful product coming from these wells and that benefit anybody, and the leaks contribute to global warming gases. As methane, these gases have a global warming potential at least 28 times that of CO2, carbon dioxide. And elimination of this methane is the low-hanging fruit for minimizing our greenhouse gases in Colorado. This methane should be eliminated by proper P&A, plug and abandonment of these low-producing and orphaned wells. But also as a local resident's concern, I hike, I bike the county roads, I backcountry ski, my friends fish and hunt in our private and public lands, and it's depressing to come across oil well skeletons, essentially trash dumps in the form of old fences, rusted pipes, drill rig guy anchors, pump jacks, often partially cannibalized, big oil tanks, and old oily processed water pits in the middle of our private and public lands. My grandkids enjoy dog sledding in the route in White River National Forest, and that sledding path takes them by some old orphan wells, a really ugly intrusion in our otherwise natural environment. So these orphan and low producing wells affect not only my family, but also our important recreation industry. I ask you to establish comprehensive cleanup and bonding programs for funding the cleanup of these old wells and adequate bonding for future cleanup of the wells. And that these funds come from the industry that has in earlier times and will continue to be granted the right to extract the oil and gas beneath the surface and to profit from that granting. That right doesn't extend to permanent trashing of the surface. We don't need another Fram type bankruptcy with the taxpayer again on the hook for cleanup. And yes, tighter and comprehensive cleanup and bonding programs may have negative effects on some of the industry. The public has been taking the hit too long for rules that attempt to be accommodating to the oil and gas industry. The rules should be balanced, and that fairness should also be fairness to the citizens. This cleanup needs to be completed in a reasonable period of time, let's say 8 to 10 years. Acceptable cleanup must be certified by COGCC, including at least one site visit to prove the cleanup meets the Colorado cleanup standards before it's acceptable to COGCC. And thank you for your time and attention here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your being with us this morning and providing your perspective. With that, we will now recognize Ronald Booth.
Yes, good morning. How are we all doing today? It is still morning, right? Just to begin with, I'd like to say that the current proposed financial assurance regulations, though they represent a step in the right direction of assigning some responsibility to the oil and gas operators, that in the long term, these measures seem as though they fall short and are somewhat short-sighted. As the previous speaker kind of pointed out, nationwide studies have shown that wells that have been quote unquote properly laid to rest eventually become compromised, deteriorate, and begin to leak, sometimes in periods of less than 20 years. Benzene, VOCs, and methanes, all those dangers that we currently look to avoid crop up again a decade or two down the road. So, not only do these financial assurances need to cover capping and reclaiming land of wells that we're considering permitting today, but somehow we have to cover the cost of the ongoing monitoring so that if these wells begin to leak again in the future, that the funds are available there to deal with that. I'd also like to bring up one thing that I think hardly anybody's mentioned yet this morning, and that I'd like to remind the other listeners of. I know that the commission's well aware of what their primary mission is, but the primary mission of this commission is to regulate in a manner that protects public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources. It's not to ensure anybody's personal wealth or anything like that. So, that's the commission's job. It is not to assure anybody's personal incomes or that past incomes that relied on fossil fuels will continue endlessly into the future, because that is not the future any of us is looking at if we're honest about it. These elements of the mission must be met in a manner that protects future generations, and until or unless there are adequate protections that can be put in place to meet the stated mission goals, then the issuance of any new drilling permits should be suspended until there can be reasonable certainty that the primary mission can be fulfilled. Those who are opposed to these regulations basically are acting that we collectively further shirk financial responsibilities that we all should have been sharing for decades at a much less cost than what we're facing today. Sadly, the time has come, like it or not, that we all must pay the price of those decades of ignoring the looming climate crisis and for believing the lies and the deceptions of the fossil fuel industry has foisted on us ever since back in the 60s. Many talk about the money that will be lost.
Mr.
They
Booth, if
don't
you could
talk
wrap up,
about the
please.
incredible costs that we're already paying statewide, nationwide, and worldwide because of the lack of adequate regulations. Thank you for your time today, and I will check out. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being with us and providing your perspective. We now have Sally, and I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but you're with us, so welcome.
Hi, it's Dowiet. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, good morning. I think I'm the last one who gets to say good morning. I have been a resident of Colorado for over 50 years. My name is Sally Dowiet. Thank you, commissioners, for your patience and your commitment to this very arduous process. I truly hope that it will help you to find courage and clarity to protect the health, safety, and environment for Colorado. We are living in an age when the things that were once unimaginable have become tragic reality. Evidence of this is the Marshall Fire, a fire on the plains and suburban neighborhoods that destroyed the homes of over 1,000 people in less than one day. As I watched those events unfold, it came to my mind that maybe if the fire had gone a few more miles to the east and the north, it would have reached an area where there are over 100 wells, tanks, and oil and gas facilities with potential unimaginable destruction. And under current bonding rules, who would pay for that? Many people have already testified today in favor of stronger rules, so I will make my requests short. To protect the health, safety, and environment, including financial health and safety of Colorado, I ask you to, 1, require individual market-priced bonding for all new and transferred wells, including those on federal land. 2, initiate a phased compliance for individual well bonding that is timely and reflects real costs for existing wells, including those on federal lands. 3, make the rules hard and fast for all operators and not at the director's discretion. If I want to buy an expensive meal at a restaurant, okay, no one gives me director discretion if I can't pay for it. If I can't pay for it, I don't eat. It's as simple as that. 4, set up a system that incentivizes corporations to plug all their low-producing and non-producing wells. I have heard several people in this hearing say that oil and gas operators cannot afford this expense. And my response to that is, neither can I, and neither can the people of Colorado. Our health, our safety, our environment are more important than the profit of the oil companies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning and providing your perspective. We do appreciate that. We now are going to recognize Aaron Smith. Mr. Smith was on the agenda yesterday, but we were unable to locate him. That was probably technical error on our part, but we're glad we have you today, so go ahead.
All right, thank you for having me. So I'm going to be reading a statement on behalf of a student who's studying environmental science at CU Boulder. So she couldn't be here today, but I'm reading this statement from her as a concerned citizen. So she says, "Hello, my name is Erin Manty. I'm a sophomore at CU Boulder studying environmental science. I'm speaking on behalf of my community. Thank you for this opportunity to share my perspective. I strongly discourage the commission from accepting single bonds to cover multiple oil wells. This practice continues a pattern of mismanagement that leads to environmental damage, danger that it poses to Colorado residents, and irresponsible spending. When multiple oil wells are covered by a single bond, there is not enough money available to properly clean up after it is no longer financially productive. From an operator's perspective, it is more profitable to keep a well operating indefinitely than it is to close it down and clean it up. Currently, there are around 50,000 unplugged wells around the state, and unfortunately, only about 120 million in the state bonds, which means Colorado taxpayers must make up the difference, a cost estimate of about $8 billion. Keeping these wells unplugged is also very dangerous to the environment and residents. Oil wells are harmful to wildlife habitats and air quality. Along the Front Range, people are developing health consequences from living near these oil and gas wells, such as headaches, nosebleeds, nausea, just to name a few, due to the poor air quality and toxic chemicals that come from these operations. Wildlife is also suffering from habitat loss around the Four Corners, North Park, Eastern Plains, and many more regions across Colorado. In order to solve this issue, I urge the Commission to refrain from accepting blanket bonds and enforce bonds for each individual well. Every individual bond should be priced at an actual full cost of plugging the well, and there should be no exception whatsoever. Wells on federal lands should not be exempt. If operators don't have enough money to clean up their wells, then they don't have enough money to open the well in the first place. Our wildlife and people are suffering due to mismanagement of oil wells statewide, and I urge this commission to take this statement into consideration. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for speaking on behalf of the student. We do appreciate that and glad that we were able to find you today.
Thank you.
With that, Stuart Nyholm is recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Nyholm.
Thank you very much for this time, commissioners. And ACTAN strongly supports the positions of Logic, Colorado 350, Colorado Rising. And our major concern is the impact that these wells, abandoned wells, orphan wells particularly, have upon our environment. We had an occasion, we visit our son in Louisiana who works in the oil field, and we travel around. We do a lot of traveling, and it's just sad to see the number of orphan wells that leak and spoil the wild, pristine environment of Louisiana and have the same potential of having the devastating effects upon here in Colorado. So we strongly support having an adequate financial bonding system for each and every well, orphan well here in Colorado. My major concern is how do you enforce it? What are the mechanisms to make sure that these wells are being plugged, that the operators are proceeding as they have promised, and what are the consequences if they don't? And we've heard a little bit of information how there's some bad operators. How do you hold them accountable? How do you hold their feet to the fire? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nyholm. And I would just let everyone know for the record that you referenced ACTAN, and not everyone may know that, but that is an acronym for Adams County Communities for Drilling Accountability Now.
Thank you.
Make sure everyone is aware of that. So we thank you for being with us and providing your perspective. All right, with that, we will recognize Wayne Quaid.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your attention and concern. I'm a Western Colorado citizen. As unreclaimed wells are a major source of environmental pollution, I'm concerned that they are not being fully plugged and reclaimed as completely and as rapidly as possible. I'm concerned most because of the cumulative effect of methane as a serious greenhouse gas, and also the polluting effect of other toxic products getting into our groundwater. My major concern here is that the leaseholders and oil and gas companies need to pay the true and full cost of their impact on the affected environment. Some of the things that concern me most and concern me in this matter are the effects to avoid full remedial work. One is the many cases that have become a public subsidy. And tier 3 is another way around full cost bonding. This is inappropriate and forceful to the COGCC. Another is the concept of stripper wells to either avoid full cleanup or remedial costs themselves or postpone these efforts indefinitely. There are 35,000 of these in Colorado, so you can just imagine the cumulative impact here. Thanks for any efforts you can do to address my concerns and those of many others in these matters.
Thank you. We appreciate your being with us this afternoon, Mr. Quaid, and we appreciate your comments. With that, we will now recognize Mary DeFranco. Ms. DeFranco, you are a panelist. If you want to unmute, hopefully we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, good. Thank you. My name is Mary DeFranco. I live in Paonia, Colorado. I'm just an individual, a farmer living in the North Fork Valley. I'm a land steward, and I bring you my observations from the place I live. Our climate has changed, is changing. It's faster, hotter, drier, bigger swings in temperature and moisture. So much more noise from truck traffic. So many more animals are not well for no known reason. What can I do? I ask myself. So I got together with several friends in November to circulate a petition, which I am going to ask to put in hopes of having some impact on you about the future of keeping our air and water clean. We already live in a hot spot, as you know, because of past oil and gas exploration in this area. So there are a lot of people that are feeling this. So the petition reads, fracking has a long documented history of poisoning air, land, and water. Taxpayers cannot pay the cost nor bear the psychological toil of the accidents, the incidents, the road repair, health failures, farming, ranching, hunting, and fishing collapse, community disintegration, wildlife populations and ecosystem degradation, site restoration, water, land, air, water quality decline, nor the devastating climate effects brought by fossil fuel extraction. We are in the midst of a mega drought, and fracking has stolen many hundreds of billions of gallons of Colorado water from us and from thirsty generations to come. We, the undersigned, are calling on the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to do its job of protecting public health and deny all new permits. Demand that fossil fuel extraction companies reclaim all the land they have disturbed, clean up their chemicals and trash they have left, and stop all methane and other harmful chemical leaks immediately. I'm submitting these petitions in hope of seeing change being created. As of now, my nose runs a lot when I'm outside and my eyes burn. When I leave this area that's a hot spot, my symptoms go away. This is real for me and it's every day. I'm not a statistic to myself. It's what I experience. Our valley's future depends on your decisions. Please don't give out more leases and not clean up after what's happening. We must look to the future. We must have a big picture. It's not about today's price of energy. It's about what happens 10 years from now. I have a new grandchild and I'm very concerned for her. We must come up with change, and change doesn't just happen. We have to create it. We have to come up with new methods and new ideas of how we can make this work so we protect our earth. And making money and keeping things that as they are is not the goal. Making the better earth a better place is the goal. And every little thing we do matters. I am not going to waste your time with the facts of the damage that has been done and will be done. We already know this. I'm asking you to please help protect where I live, the North Fork Valley. And there was a book written
Ms.
many years
DeFranco,
ago about,
your time is up. If you could try to wrap up, please.
okay, there was a book written many years ago that everything we need to know, we learned in kindergarten. We were taught to be kind, be honest, respect others, do the right thing, and always clean up after yourself. Please leave money in bonds to clean up. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us and providing your perspective. We now will recognize Robin Nichols.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today regarding the draft 700 series rules. My name is Robin Nichols from rural Delta County near Hotchkiss. I've been a building contractor and organic farmer based in the North Fork Valley for 50 years. Over those years, I've spent a lot of time sitting on boards of directors of 6 Western Slope nonprofit citizen organizations. And as a Colorado taxpayer for over half a century, I'm increasingly concerned with our state's fiscal policies, especially when it comes to subsidizing corporate polluters of our land, air, and water resources, such as the oil and gas industry, frankly. For example, until the implementation of Senate Bill 19181, it cost my construction company more to obtain from Delta County a permit for the construction of a single-family septic system than it costs an oil and gas company to obtain from COGCC a permit to drill a gas well. For an industry that is a major contributor to the current climate crisis, it is imperative that it, at the very least, cover the actual cost of plugging, abandonment, reclamation, and remediation of wells, land, and facilities it no longer needs or wants. We've heard a wide range of cost estimates of plugging and reclamation over the past few years, the latest from COGCC being an average of around $92,000. I ask that the commission decide on a level of financial assurance that adequately covers the actual costs that the state of Colorado might incur in hiring contractors to properly plug wells, test them for leakage over time, dispose of abandoned facilities such as storage tanks, compressors, defunct pipelines, pits, etc., remediate soils by diesel, impacted by diesel and produced water leakage, restore the site to its original condition, and pay COGCC staff to administer and inspect such work. I also ask that there be no more blanket bonding, meaning that each and every well is in effect bonded for the future costs it will incur. Oh, and don't forget inflation. Earlier testimony referred to the bankruptcy of Fram Operating LLC and the resulting millions of dollars it will cost us taxpayers in unpaid fines for various violations, as well as plugging and reclamation costs. The fact that Fram's wells and facilities are on federal lands is clear evidence that COGCC must require adequate financial assurance wherever a well or ancillary facility is located, be it federal, state, or private land, and there should be no exemptions for any operator. Thank you for your diligence in creating and enforcing these rules.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Appreciate you being with us and providing commentary to us this afternoon. We now will recognize Amari Bargiani.
Hi.
Hello, we can hear you.
Great. So my name is Emery Bargioni, and I'm a resident of Bayfield in Southwest Colorado. Traveling through the region, it is hard not to see ample oil and gas development, much of it in close proximity to residential communities. I am in strong support of robust financial assurances to better promote our public health, protect Colorado's environment, and reduce the burden on taxpayers. There is nothing arbitrary about this rulemaking. Abandoned wells must be capped without question. However, current financial investments by the oil and gas industry are inadequate and pose a massive burden on the taxpayer. The oil and gas industry should be held fully accountable for the costs of well reclamation, and anything less is exploitive of the public. Imposing a common sense regulation on oil and gas won't shut down the industry. Oil and gas should demonstrate the financial solvency to clean up the mess it creates. And such financial assurances create better and more responsible actors and help mitigate damaging environmental impacts. The climate crisis is raging, limiting water supplies for rural community members and endangering homeowners like myself through the escalating risk of wildfire. And properly capping inactive wells is a no-brainer way to limit emissions and contribute to our state's larger climate action goals. In addition to dangerous greenhouse gas emissions, orphan wells release other hazardous air pollutants into the air and contaminate our watershed. Living in such close proximity to oil and gas activity, communities like mine are very much affected. And those financial assurances, such as those being discussed today, are an invaluable safeguard to our public health and well-being. I encourage the COGCC to adopt the proposed rules and make them even stronger. Please consider the following recommendations. 1, mandating full cost bonds and financial assurances for all low producing and inactive wells. 2, making sure operators on private, state, and federal lands meet all bonding requirements. 3, placing a short timeline on operators to plug wells after they've been deemed inactive and to inspect those wells regularly through leak detection and repair emissions testing. Thank you to all the commissioners for taking our comments today.
Thank you very much for being with us and testifying from beautiful Bayfield, Colorado. Appreciate you being with us. We have one speaker left that we have recognized from our list, and that's Leslie Weiss, and so we will bring her to the panel. While she's getting ready, I do want to send a shout out. If anybody else is out there who signed up for public comment and we've missed you, please hit the chat or raise your hand, and we will make sure that we find you. And with that, Ms. Weiss, I believe you are up.
Hi, thank you, commissioners, for taking public comment. I have been able to listen to a few speakers yesterday and today, and most I heard were heavily in favor of the oil and gas industry. As you've heard, the messaging is that increasing any cost to operators is unfair and will result in impacts to jobs, fuel costs, tax revenue to the state, which would be disastrous. I happen to know that many of these speakers are being paid by their employees in the oil and gas industry. This resistance to change in the status quo is real and understandable. We've seen it before. But when it is clear that an industry is doing so much damage to people, wildlife, and the environment, it becomes necessary to make difficult decisions, to make changes that have large societal impact. In retrospect, would it have been wise to coddle the cigarette and tobacco industry when it became clear of the cancerous impact and that the industry had been misrepresenting its knowledge? Do you know who wasn't paid to talk to you last evening and today about whether the oil and gas industry should fully pay to clean up their messes when they've completed making money from each well, or whether taxpayers who have to live with the pollution of this industry should subsidize the $150,000 that Carbon Tracker estimates is the average cost to close a single well? The thousands of people in Superior and Louisville who have just had their homes destroyed because of the severe warming that has and continues to occur in our state. I live relatively close to the fire and now have to live with a new burden of fearing each time we have high winds. Will a simple spark cause another fire? Our state is literally burning due to climate change, that the oil and gas industry is a top contributor. Furthermore, the air quality continues to deteriorate. Last summer, it seemed there were more ozone alert days than not. It was very difficult often to even be outside. Your job is difficult. Did anyone say it would be easy? Easy is implementing incremental changes like these proposed for financial assurances rulemaking. Easy is continuing to coddle the industry that has already done so much damage. Easy is following the governor's insufficient approach to this critical problem. However, difficult is doing what is necessary to make changes to address a critical problem that is literally causing our state to burn down. I'm here to speak for the people who may have wanted to talk about the urgency of climate change, but can't because they're now trying to figure out how to rebuild their lives and dealing with grief of having lost everything they own. I'm also here to speak for the wildlife that has perished in the unprecedented fires that have occurred in the state in the past few years. These oil and gas employees speaking out about only their own jobs, their own livelihoods. I want to speak out for those and that which you are directed to protect, but cannot do so, cannot be here. I implore you to do the difficult job you are paid to do, to enforce SB 181, to do all that is necessary to protect public health, safety, welfare, environment, and wildlife. Asking taxpayers to subsidize the cleanup of wells while continuing to allow operators to drill and add greenhouse gas emissions to an increasingly warming climate does not fall anywhere in that mission statement. Thank you for hearing us all today and yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you for participating with us and providing your perspective. Ms. Larson, did we generate any additional speakers from my shout out?
We did not.
Okay. Okay, with that, I believe that we have accomplished our agenda for today, which was to finish up 2 days worth of public comment. We appreciate the 160-ish people that took time out of their days and nights to testify to us and bring perspective to us. It is helpful to commissioners to listen to the various perspectives that exist as we contemplate the financial assurances rulemaking in docket 2106-00097. Any final points from any commissioner? All right, well, I think we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have none opposed, so we are adjourned. Commissioners, have a nice weekend reading more materials, as I know that's what's on everybody's agenda. So we will see you bright and early Tuesday for the start of party presentations. Have a good weekend.